Entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
A really important thing about GB News, and it's brought something completely different to the landscape.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, the reality is that most British journalists are afraid. That's not GB News.
Journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
We're here to talk about things in a way that have never been broadcast on British airways before.
Do not miss a moment on GB News.
The #1 news channel in the country.
Well, that's it here from us in Paddington. It's time to hand you over to The Late Show live in Washington, D.C. with our very own Bev Turner. Now, the front page is over here. You through the very latest from America. There she is. Go on, Bev, over to you.
I lost your sound for a minute. We had your voice and my face then, Patrick. It's a terrible combination. Listen, already the inbox is making reference to our lovely set. Catherine has said, oh, I like the Christmas set in the Washington studio. Nice snowy backdrop. Needs a bit more glitz than the London one. A bit more sparkle. Something is missing. Don't take that personally, Patrick. I'm sure she wasn't talking about you. Stay with me. This is The Late Show Live. On The Late Show Live tonight.
Look, you know, to do a pact with people, you've got to think I'm going to shake your hand and you're an honourable person. After the betrayal post the 2019 election, we do not believe them to be honourable.
Well, tonight, Nigel Farage, the leader of the Reform Party, has called out the fake news of the Financial Times, claiming that he's about to do a deal with the Tories. But do you think he really is? also tonight.
I want those boats taken out, and if we have to, we'll attack on land also, just like we attack on sea.
President Trump has warned Venezuela that it will attack them on the ground as well as from the air. But is he really, therefore, the president of peace? Tonight, discussions are being had on the Ukraine war. It seems that President Trump is on the cusp of peace. We'll bring you the latest on all of those developments.
Are you aware of any more violent offenders or sex offenders?
There have been releases in error since I made that statement, but I want to convey that the trend this year is fortunately downward.
An historic day, actually, today, because David Lammy has scrapped juries for the majority of crimes. Meanwhile, 12 prisoners have escaped. But what does that mean if we're living in a country where you are not judged by your peers? We're going to be looking at the front pages of the papers hours before the ink is dry. We're going to be breaking the news before it becomes news. We are live, of course, in Washington, D.C. As you can see, it's snowing outside. We are yards from the White House, and we have a huge amount to get through this evening, so stay with me. That there was a picture of the actress Sienna Miller, because she has been on the red carpet. She is 43 years old. Nothing wrong with that, marvellous. She's got a boyfriend who's only 28. Again, nothing wrong with that, marvellous. But why do people feel the need to be on a red carpet wearing just a knickers with a pregnant bump and pretty much a sheer dress over the top? Is there anything wrong with that? I've got a panel of two gentlemen tonight, so I'm expecting you to have a strong opinion, fellas. Don't hold back. We're going to be talking about that in just a little while as well this evening. So, moving on. Now, Nigel Farage has tonight slammed a Financial Times story about a reform pact with the Conservative Party. He has said this about a story that's in tomorrow's, or today's for you, Financial Times. He said, a false story tonight claiming reform would do a deal with the Tories. After 14 years of dishonesty and lies, they should never be forgiven. The idea that I'd work with them is ludicrous. They betrayed my trust in 2019, and we will ensure that they cease to be a national party in May. Let's talk now to my panel. We're just waiting on a guest on that in London. We had a few technical issues so far this evening. So nice to meet you, Matthew Hurt, Republican strategist. Haven't met you before. Eric Ham. We're old friends by now. Now, do you want to talk about Sienna Miller in a see-through dress or Nigel Farage? How familiar are you with Nigel Farage and his political shenanigans in the UK?
You know, I'm a huge fan of Nigel Farage, and just like Donald Trump in the United Kingdom, there is no question about where Nigel Farage stands on the issues. And I think if he has made these statements ahead of the Financial Times coverage tomorrow or later today, then that's where he stands. And Reform Party is making headwaves in the United Kingdom where a third party would not make the same kind of political splash in the United States. What's interesting, I think, Eric, from my point of view, is we've still got three years or so until an election. It's very much a moving goalpost at the moment, but we're looking at about 3 years. Nigel Farage is already this week having to fight off people going on to chat shows saying that he was a racist when he was at school, you know, 40 odd years ago, more, 50 years ago. And now he's got newspapers suggesting that he's going to do a deal with the Conservative parties, and they are doing terribly in the polls. How does somebody in his position keep this up for 3 more years when there is so much mud being thrown at him?
I think that's a sign that actually how effective he is. The fact that you have so much mud being thrown at you, people see him as a threat. People see him as someone right now, currently, the United States does not have, I think, a viable opposition party. But I think what you're seeing in Nigel Farage is someone who actually knows how to actually deflect the mud, but also when he needs to be able to throw it back, I think he's very good at that as well. Yeah, but it seems like all the time at the moment, Matthew, he's just having to firefight. And in a way, there are parallels with, there are definite parallels with President Trump before both elections, but also particularly before this election, where it looked like everybody was against him and he had no chance. And somehow he managed to win over the public in the court of public opinion whilst having the machine of the media
even the courts against him, and very powerful Democratic Party trying to throw mud in his direction. How did he do it?
Well, he just went on offense and spoke directly to the people. But if you're on defense, you're not defining yourself, and that's the challenge that Nigel Farage faces. Certainly he's over the target because he's taking flack. But for the next 3 years, if he's constantly defending himself, he is unable to make the case for reform ahead of that election. And I think that's an important distinction.
So therefore, he will be distracted from talking about any particular policies. Is that a very effective way, do you think, Eric, of tripping somebody up who is trying to take office repeatedly by the media?
I think what Matthew said is actually correct in that it may not necessarily be effective, but it's almost like a death by 1,000 cuts, because if you're not actually defining who you are and you're defending who you are, then that means whatever the allegations that are being made against you, that is what people are constantly hearing, because that's what you're defending. And so I think that's what we're seeing play out here. And if he has to do this for 3 years, that could be, I think, that could pose problematic for him, because now you're looking at someone who's heading into a potential election looking more weakened than he is strong.
Well, this has just landed on the front page of the Financial Times, and the headline is Farage tells reform donors he expects tie-up with Tories before the next election. Now, Nigel came out quite quickly onto X to say this wasn't true, but this is apparently coming from donors to the party. One donor said that Farage had told him he expected to do a deal with the Tories, whether it is a merger or an agreement on cooperation between the two parties to ease reform's route to election victory. Now, the challenge that he has here is how much he does cozy up to a party that is on, well, it's meant to be on the right. It hasn't been for many years, some would say, because the Tories were annihilated at the last election because they were so unpopular after 14 years and so unpopular after managing the pandemic. And so there have been certain Conservative MPs who have already moved to Nigel, but there will be a point at which the Reform Party tips too far. If they take too many, then they've got Nadine Dorries, they've got Danny Kruger. Like, if they take too many, it will tip so far that they will lose the people, which is the equivalent of the MAGA base. They will lose those who go, we don't want Tories 2.0, we want reform.
It's so much different than here in the United States, where we have a winner-take-all, first-past-the-post, two-party system, where the parties are vessels who represent the people who show up. And in the United Kingdom, there is this parliamentary system that allows for something like reform. That said, if there's an exodus from the Tories, it would be very difficult to distinguish which party is which.
And it might be that ultimately they do have some sort of agreement whereby there are certain seats that maybe the Conservatives step aside or Reform step aside in certain seats. There might be a little bit of chess that goes on, but the idea that the Financial Times is suggesting is that he would tie up something much more formal with the Conservatives. I'm not sure I see it. What do you think at home? Would you like to see, I know a lot of you are big fans of the Reform Party, would you like to see Nigel cozy up to the Conservatives? gbnews.com/your say. Now, our main story tonight is whether Donald Trump is really the president of peace. Well, today he threatened to send troops into Venezuela over that war on drugs.
I want those boats taken out, and if we have to, we'll attack on land also, just like we attack on sea. And there's very little coming in by sea. I think we've knocked out over 90% of it. There's very little, and I understand that. There's very little. We're saving hundreds of thousands of lives with those pinpoint attacks.
So Donald Trump this evening has threatened Venezuela with an invasion. He's also put countries on notice who allow their people to enter America and illegally deal drugs. His press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, reaffirmed today his position on immigration, considering a travel ban on as many as 30 countries. Meanwhile, his son-in-law Jared Kushner is in Moscow with Witkoff as well, meeting Vladimir Putin, and could be on the cusp of a peace deal in Ukraine. So how is he getting on being the president of peace? I will discuss this with my panel still. Eric, let me come to you first. He wants to clear the Russia-Ukraine situation. Oh, he wants that desperately off his desk, and he had since he came into office on January the 22nd of this year. What chance do you think he has of getting that all in a nice, neat bow by December the 31st?
Oh, that's impossible.
Isn't it?
Yeah, we're talking about Vladimir Putin here more so than we're talking about President Trump, even though we know that bombshell Wall Street Journal article, it talked about how basically the Kremlin was pitching the Trump administration even before they came into office about potential deals that they thought would actually lead to peace. But still, we have not seen that. And one of the reasons why we continue to not see any real noticeable move towards peace is because Vladimir Putin simply doesn't want it. We continue to see a massive bombardment by Moscow, and I think unless or until Europe actually pushes back and pushes back hard, I think this war is going to continue.
They have pushed back quite hard, though, haven't they?
No, they need a more military offensive in Ukraine, and I think they have to actually put boots on the ground.
So more dead people. More dead soldiers. That's what that looks
unfortunately,
like.
that is the only thing that Vladimir Putin understands.
And yet that is also seems to be the only thing you ever hear from. I know you don't consider yourself left-wing, Eric. I don't want to offend you in that way. Not this early on the show. We've got 2 hours for me to do that. But I just keep hearing people in studios, particularly those on the political left, advocating for more bombs, more war, more dead soldiers. Sorry, go on.
No, it's complicated because Putin has a singular goal, and that is to retake portions of Ukraine that he believes are historically Russian. And they have an unlimited source of human capital, that is soldiers, potential dead bodies, and Ukraine does not have that without additional resources from European partners and the United States. And look, I'm a small L libertarian in American politics. I oppose foreign intervention. I think that we've done quite a bit for Ukraine, and there is not much more that we can do as partners, knowing that Putin is not going to concede on many of the points that he wants to achieve in this offensive.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk to Caitlin Dornbos, who is the DC correspondent for the New York Post. Caitlin, thank you very much for joining us this evening. So, where do we go with this now for President Trump? He would love to have a peaceful Christmas whilst he's trying to solve the situation in Ukraine. He's also ramping up the rhetoric around Venezuela. What does success look like for him in these two events?
Yeah, I mean, I think success looks like to him having Maduro out of power by Christmas, whether that be by force or by him fleeing to another country. And, you know, everybody wants this war to be over by Christmas, but it's not going to happen when it comes to Ukraine.
And Eric was saying there about the fact that the solution to this is just going to be more military, more munitions, more money, more European soldiers dead. Even you were suggesting even European boots on the ground, Eric?
Exactly.
Well, you'd be tough to get that past the British taxpayer, let me tell you.
I totally agree with him, though. I really think that this is where the White House is coming from on, as far as my sourcing goes. They want to see Europe be willing to put troops on the ground in Ukraine in a post-war ceasefire type setting. They want to see Europe have more skin in the game. And I don't think you're going to be able to provide a security guarantee for Ukraine good enough to get Ukraine to a position where it can accept some kind of peace deal that Russia may be willing to put forward without a real security guarantee on the ground. And that's going to have to come in the form of some sort of European troop presence in Ukraine.
And you were listening today to that final cabinet meeting, Caitlin, in the White House today. How would you describe the mood in that room as this government gets towards the end of its first year in power?
Yeah, look, there is a number of issues that have been coming to play in foreign policy and the defense sphere for this administration, more so than I think anybody was really predicting. I mean, certainly the world view leading up to the Trump administration taking office in January, we were dealing with all of these different conflicts, not necessarily Venezuela, but others. Now, Trump came into office as this quote-unquote peace president, was pledging to end all the wars, has claimed to do that himself. But really, I don't see peace on the horizon anywhere. As far as, Gaza, with the Gaza peace deal, while that conflict is currently at a pause, I was just in Gaza 2 weeks ago listening to Israeli soldiers talking about how that peace deal and that ceasefire isn't necessarily as peaceful as you would think it is. We've also got Ukraine ramping up. Now I think all eyes are on South America to see what the U.S. does there, as our Secretary of Defense tries to maneuver political games in that arena. It's really going to be it would be so lovely to see everything wrapped by the holidays, but I think it's unfortunately going to continue being a very violent time this holiday season.
And what do you think is the motivation behind the Venezuela attacks? Is it just about stopping the drug traffickers, or is it about regime change in that country?
Yeah, well, President Trump has been wanting a regime change in Venezuela since his first term in office. That was documented by John Bolton, his former security advisor, in his book. This is something that's more than just stopping the drugs. It also has to do with immigration and creating an environment in Venezuela where Venezuelans actually want to stay in Venezuela instead of coming to the U.S. It also has to do with a number of just tensions between the U.S. and that country, oil, etc. So there are a multitude of factors. I don't believe the White House when they say it's just about drugs. There is more going on there, but drugs certainly plays a big role. And when you do hear the White House talking about the drug factor, I think it's important to listen for what kinds of drugs they are talking about, because a lot of accusations are made that 25,000 deaths are associated with each boat because of the amount of drugs that are on it. But it's hard to nail the White House down on exactly what kinds of drugs are in those boats, be it fentanyl, which is far more lethal than the cocaine that is suspected to be aboard the ships.
Okay, Caitlin, thank you so much. Caitlin Dornbos there, DC correspondent for the New York Post. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me just ask you, gentlemen in the studio, a little bit about Pete Hegseth's performance this afternoon in that cabinet meeting. He is, what's the word to describe? What adjective would you use to describe Pete Hegseth?
Hot potato.
Hot potato?
I like hot potato, and I worked alongside Pete Hegseth professionally for a number of years in the mid-2010s. And so this is a very interesting thing coming from a policy perspective that is not interventionist in its nature. To become Secretary of War and to wade into this Venezuelan question is concerning for me.
But the point that he made about the fact that he sort of jokes about it, and it's probably a little bit sort of gamey for the British palate, let me just put it that way. But when he was joking about the fact that they've got no one to kill now because the boats aren't there anymore, because it has acted as a deterrent, he's right about that. He's only had to blow a couple of boats out of the water, and now they aren't trying to deliver the drugs via the boats anymore. It's worked.
We have a situation in the Constitution called letters of marque and reprisal. I don't have concerns about targeting elements that are coming across international waters that seek to harm Americans. I'm deeply concerned about the situation of going into Venezuela, but we have a constitutional authority to target enemies who are attempting to approach our shores, and I think that's a reasonable pathway to stop these kinds of situations.
Is it, Eric?
No, because we still have yet to see any evidence that suggests that these boats are drug carriers and that these are people who are actually trying to enter the United States. All of these attacks have taken place in international waters, not in U.S. waters. And so I think this is deeply concerning. And I think also this is why you see Pete Hegseth and President Trump now speaking and putting Admiral Hosey's name out there, somehow suggesting that he is the one who has actually ordered these killings, because I think they know that what we're seeing now is Congress has already announced that they want to do more investigations about these killings, what happened, what took place, and more importantly, why. And now you have the press beginning to push back. And so I think they recognize that this is a growing concern that they have to actually confront and contend with.
I'm sort of trusting that there was intelligence before they blow those boats out of the water. It wasn't like Matthew on his little trip around the Bahamas that he's just done for Thanksgiving. He's just told us all about, made us very jealous behind the scenes. Let me know what you think at home. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
He found juries, and I quote, act as a filter for prejudice. He's scrapping the very institution he once lauded.
Furious reaction, and quite right too, to David Lammy's latest attempts to clear the backlog in our courts, he says, by scrapping our juries. Absolutely awful decision which changes the complexion of our country forever. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In his tirade, he never once mentioned victims. Not once. Not once in his clip did he talk about the people waiting in that backlog.
That was the Secretary of State for Justice and, of course, the Deputy Prime Minister and a lawyer, David Lammy, insisting that juries remain fundamental, but then saying that too many defendants are playing the system and victims deserve faster justice, because today Lammy set out plans to curb the right to a jury trial as part of efforts to tackle the court's emergency and cut the growing backlog. Now, under these proposals, jury trials for crimes in England and Wales that are likely to result in a sentence of less than 3 years will be scrapped. Meanwhile, it's been revealed that 12 prisoners have been mistakenly released from jail in the past month and 2 are still on the run. Now, David Lammy Lamy says the pair at large are not violent or sexual offenders, but he wouldn't give any further details while police prepare arrests. Basically, it's all in a bit of a mess. So joining me now is James Gray, Treasurer to the Criminal Bar Association. And James, I want to talk to you about this shocking news, as far as I'm concerned, that something that we've had for hundreds of years in the UK is going. No jury trials guaranteed for people. What would the implications of that be, James?
The implication, or the principal one, is that it will usher in a much inferior system, and likely a system that is fundamentally unfair.
But they're saying they have to do this because there's such a huge backlog. So will it make the system faster?
No. They are saying they have to do this. They have to do something. They don't have to do this. This is the wrong thing to do. There are plenty of things they could do before removing a principle and fundamental right.
Such as what? What else could they be doing instead of this?
Well, they could address the inefficiencies in our system, which are currently legion. It's difficult to know where to start, or how many to mention. But if they only addressed some of the inefficiencies, they would cut into the backlog pretty quickly. If they opened the courts to full capacity, then the backlog would come down pretty quickly, pretty significantly. Instead, what we've seen, and it's not just the Labour government, but what we've seen is successive governments putting a stranglehold on the courts, not allowing them to run at full capacity, and therefore preventing them from processing the cases that come to them. There has therefore a huge queue has built up in the courts of around 80,000 cases. And that's why victims, as Mr. Lamy rather piously put it, are suffering so much. It's not because of the jury system. It's because of the way successive governments have treated the courts and the system.
And isn't there also a problem, James, specifically about getting suspected criminals to court on time, that often you might waste a whole day because they haven't been picked up from jail and brought to the court? That's also a problem, isn't it?
It's a huge problem. Almost every day we go to courts, and if our clients are in custody, then they have to be brought to the court by the people who have a contract to bring them. They don't bring them on time, and so if the court or the case is due to start at 10, they may not arrive until 11 or 12, or in one instance 4:30, which means that the courts sit twiddling their thumbs, waiting for them to arrive, wasting the entire day. If the government did no more
and wasting
than
taxpayers'
address
money.
that problem, it's a complete waste of taxpayers' money. Yeah,
but David Lammy
waste.
is a lawyer by trade, James. He must know this. He went to Harvard Law School. Has he been quoted before as saying things that were in support of jury trials historically?
Many times. Our Lord Chancellor is the author of the Lamy Review, or Lamy Report, from 2017. That was a review of the criminal justice system, or the experience of ethnic minorities in the criminal justice system. And he said this: juries deliberate as a group through open discussion. This both deters and exposes prejudice and unintended bias. Judgments must be justified to others. Successive studies have shown that juries deliver equitable results, regardless of the ethnic makeup of the jury or the defendant in question. And so what he was saying there is that juries are a very important safeguard against prejudice. They make the system fair. He also said, a few years later, jury trials are a fundamental part of our democratic settlement. Criminal trials without juries are a bad idea. The government, of course he wasn't part of the government then, he was in opposition, the government need to pull their finger out and acquire empty buildings across the country to make sure these trials can happen in a way that is safe. You don't fix the backlog with trials that are widely perceived as unfair. It is
just
difficult
incredible.
to reconcile. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, surely that's just about the fact that the power's gone to his head, James, and whoever wanted him to make our legal system more political has got their way. Is he the kind of man that might be a little vulnerable to persuasion, do you think, by somebody in the background going, you know what, we'd love to bring politics into the courtroom. We'd love to be able to parachute in certain judges to certain cases and get, I don't know, people who riot or people who believe in free speech, that kind of thing, people who riot against the government. We'd really love them to not have to go up against a jury and just put them in front of a judge that we have handpicked and get them put away. Is that what's going on here, James, or am I just too sceptical?
You might be a bit sceptical, Bev, but I'm not sure he's trying to place politicians into the courtroom. But what he is doing is certainly making, he's removing a barrier between the people, citizens, and the state. Juries are a very important safeguard, a very important barrier between those two. Yeah. And removing it, I think, is problematic and may, I grant you, lead to some of the problems you mentioned.
Yeah. OK, James, thank you so much. James Gray there, Treasurer to the Criminal Bar Association. I just want to ask my panel, Republican strategist Matthew Hurt and political analyst Eric Ham, your take on this. When you look at what's happening in the UK, what do you make of us? 800
years of Western legal theory outlined in the Magna Carta. I think it is very important for people, if they're standing trial, they are viewed by a jury of their peers. It's so important. You can't shake that just for efficiencies in government. I think that's a bad trade.
Eric?
We just had a very high-profile case here in the Eastern region with former FBI Director James Comey. And this region, it's called the Rocket Docket. And it's called that for a reason, because the judges, they move expeditiously through those cases. And I think that's what you need there. You need judges who will move the process forward. Here in the United States, we have in our Constitution right to a speedy trial. And they take that literally and seriously here in the Eastern District. So the judges themselves will ensure that cases move and they move swiftly.
But they don't do that by taking away the jury?
Absolutely not. But they make sure that all of the arguments between the lawyers are heard, and they're heard in a very quick manner to actually move those cases forward.
One of the many things you're getting right that we are not. Right, moving on. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. Is it time that we adopted tougher language towards migration and border issues? This is the post from Secretary Kristi Noem. She is the the Secretary of Homeland Security. And she says, I'm recommended a full travel ban on every damn country that's been flooding our nation with killers, leeches and entitlement junkies. We did a poll on gbnews.com to see if you would like language a little bit more like that in the UK. We'll tell you the results in just a minute. This is The Late Show Live only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show, live with me, Bev Turner. So, the American Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, is calling for, and I quote, this was her post on X today, formerly Twitter, she said she wants a full travel ban. This is what she recommended to the president. I've just met with the president. She said, I'm recommending a full travel ban on every damn country that's been flooding our nation with killers, leeches and entitlement junkies. Our forefathers built this nation on blood, sweat and the unyielding love of freedom, not for foreign invaders to slaughter our heroes, suck dry our hard-earned tax dollars or snatch the benefits owed to, capital letters, Americans, in capital letters. We don't want them, full stop, not one, full stop. So we ran a poll earlier today, and I'm going to give you the results of that in just a minute, as to whether the British public would like to see that sort of language around closed borders in the UK. So let's speak now to journalist Andrew Gilligan, former advisor to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me. I took a little intake of breath when I saw that tweet, because the language is so different to what we use in the UK, despite the fact that this is a topic that most people feel really strongly about.
Yeah, look, call me a wuss, call me a wet liberal, although that would be the first time anyone has called me either. But I don't like that language, and I don't think it's necessary. And I think in some ways it might harm the cause it's meant, the perfectly sound cause it's meant to promote. And I think, look, as a journalist, my alarm bells always start ringing when people use like really aggressive language. It probably means they're actually, preparing a sellout of some sort, or it's not really as tough as it looks. And I just, I've always believed in like speak softly and carry a big stick. So actually, do the tough stuff, but don't rant about it.
Well, I guess in the UK we have the soft language and the soft policy in this particular area. So we're not doing your suggestion. We're certainly not doing her suggestion. And let me show you this poll, Andrew, that GB News ran this afternoon. I mean, it was only up for a couple of hours. We had a couple of thousand people who actually took part in it, and we asked, would you want to adopt Trump's language when it comes to dealing with migration? And surprise, surprise, ladies and gentlemen, 98% of GB News viewers, listeners, readers to our website said yes, they do want the UK's leaders to adopt tougher language that is reminiscent of this particular government here in the UK. I mean, look, it's a GB News audience. They feel strongly about closed borders. Maybe that gives you some indication. But how different do you think that would be, Andrew, from a general survey of the British people?
Oh, I'm pretty sure the British people would certainly approve of the policy. I think some of them might be a bit more about the language than your sample there, but not many fewer. I think you probably get a big majority favouring that kind of language. But look, I'm all in favour of tough policy. I mean, I wrote a piece last week saying we should send all illegal asylum seekers to the Falklands, which would be a very an actual kind of substantive way of scaring them off, rather than using aggressive language, which is often, even in our kind of public discourse, been a substitute for aggressive action. I'm in favour of aggressive action, but action that's like compatible with all the relevant standards. They wouldn't be in any danger. They wouldn't be harmed in any way, but they would be severely deterred by having to spend the rest of their lives on the Falklands until they want to go back home, or until some third country could be found to take them. And that's the kind of approach I prefer. Like, let your actions do the talking. So often politicians prefer like big talk and tough words to actually acting. Obviously, it's much easier to talk tough than to act tough.
Yeah, but I think the British public is sick of the mealy-mouthed responses we get from this particular government and previous governments as well. I mean, the person that you work closely with was Rishi Sunak. Would he have agreed with you on that? Do you think that he would have, that the rhetoric around it should have been harsher? Because let's face it, if you're planning on invading, you get dragged into the language. If you're planning on coming into America via the southern border at the moment, A, they've got it down to zero because they've sorted out their issue, and B, that anybody with a visa from Afghanistan is suddenly on hold because of the shootings here in Washington. And then you see the quotes from Kristi Noem saying, we don't want the leeches, killers and entitlement junkies. You might sit back and go, I'm not going to waste my time. They're never going to let me in, or they're going to kick me out. Maybe it builds a picture of power, Andrew.
In this case, I think it feels like the policy is the same as the words, because actually, as you know, they've announced an immigration ban on 19 nations today, not just Afghanistan. Yeah. The trick was the killing by the Afghan, but there are 19 nations like Eritrea, Libya, Iraq, Turkmenistan, Sierra Leone, Venezuela. I mean, they've announced this ban, and I'm fine with that actually. And I think the likelihood is that people aren't crossing the Mexican border because they know they're going to get turned back, and they're not going to get into America, rather than because somebody said something mean on Twitter. That would be my guess, and that's why I think the actual policy is much more important than the words.
Okay, great to see you, Andrew. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your contributions, Andrew Gilligan. There, right. Let me know what you think at home, won't you? That poll, of course, is very revealing of how most of you feel about this issue. And is it just about the rhetoric? Let me know on your say. Is it just about the rhetoric, or as Andrew said there, do we just need the policies? Would you be okay with softer rhetoric as long as we had harsher policies? Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. We're going to look at the papers that have only just dropped in the last few minutes. We're going to be going to Paul Cox in London as well. See you soon.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I am Bev Turner. Let's go into the newspapers and have a look what's on the front pages for you. The Financial Times is leading with this story that we touched on at the top of the hour, which is Nigel Farage telling Reform donors that he expects tie-up with the Tories before the next election. Now, obviously, Nigel Farage has come out very strongly on X and said it's absolutely rubbish, and he felt incredibly let down by the Conservatives and he wouldn't do a deal with them. The Telegraph. They are still running on this story about the Treasury Mandarin dragged into the Office of Budget Responsibilities row. They're still putting pressure on Rachel Reeves, there, the Daily Telegraph, and President Putin saying that he is ready for war with Europe as he attacks the peace deal. He did actually preface that by saying, I don't want to go to war with Europe, but if they want to, I'm ready, is basically the full quote. So don't worry, sleep well. The Daily Express are saying no better time to act than now, as there are lives at stake. This is urgent action demanded to prevent attacks against women like Sarah Everard, who is pictured on the front page of the Express there. The Express are very good with those sorts of campaigns. And let's get the take of comedian Paul Cox, who joins us now. Paul, good to see you, Paul. Do you like my snowy background? I feel like I'm in a snow globe.
You look radiant, Bev. It looks absolutely wonderful. And by the way, nothing better than Bev Turner telling us to sleep well and not to worry about a Russian invasion. That was I chuckled. I know that was a serious moment, but that really did make me laugh.
I get a little bit angry about the way that sometimes these newspapers report the Russia-Ukraine situation, because I I know that President Putin is unpredictable, to state the obvious, and I know that he doesn't mind getting involved on behalf of his country, and I know he'd love to own Ukraine, I get all that. But the way sometimes his quotes get clipped by the press, I think is deliberately terrifying for people. So anybody watching that and thinking that Putin's going to be bombing London by the morning, it's not likely. Cut a shot of the headlines tomorrow morning.
Goodness, yeah.
I mean, let's hope I'm right on that.
You're like Michael Fish before the hurricane in '87, where he said, "There's no winds due tomorrow at all."
That is a niche reference for my American guest, let me tell you.
That is,
but
sorry,
I was right
yes.
with you with that, Paul Cox. Shall we look at the front page of the papers? What do you want to talk about from there? You go, whatever tickles your fancy.
I think we should talk about the Daily Telegraph. I think it'll interest our American panellists as well. So the headline is Treasury Mandarin dragged into OBR row. Now, this is the Chief Treasury Civil Servant. So the Chief Civil Servant, leading civil servant to Rachel Reeves, our Chancellor of the Exchequer. And he is saying that she, in a roundabout way, misled the Cabinet, misled the public, and did so in order, really, to push through policies. So she made it look worse than it was. He believes she should have shared the OBR forecast before the budget. She didn't do that because she wanted to hike things up, and the only way she could do that was to paint a very gloomy picture, and the picture was nowhere near as gloomy as she made out. And this is a very, very serious situation for the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Irrespective of party politics, certain parties are going to get in. I don't agree with Labour policy. They're going to get in and do their own thing. I accept that. That's part and parcel of what goes on. What I don't accept is them lying barefaced to us in order to push a policy through. That's bordering on dictatorship.
Yeah. This would be like, fellas, Scott Bessent going on the TV every time he possibly could from being elected and talking about, well, we had a £20 billion black hole. You guys don't really talk in tens of billions here. You're talking hundreds of billions or trillions. It'd be like Scott Bessent going on the telly every day and going, we've got a £500 billion black hole, £500 billion black hole. I'm going to have to raise your taxes because of this. And then he doesn't quite raise the taxes, but he normally does. He tweaks around the edges so everyone's still paying more for everything. And then it's revealed by one of his closest aides and also the organisation here to look at your finances, and the equivalent of the OBR. I don't know what your American equivalent of the OBR would be. And they say, your Federal Reserve, I guess, would it be?
Maybe the Office of Management and Budget.
OK, there you go. That's an organisation I'm yet to get familiar with. The Office of, what is it? Budget?
The OMB.
Office for short.
OK.
Yep.
OK, good. So that would be the equivalent of them coming out and going, actually, your predictions were wrong. And then one of Scott Bessent's closest aides saying, and you've lied about that as well. It would be awful, wouldn't it? What would happen here if the equivalent situation was to happen? Would he have to resign?
Hypothetically, if Scott Bessent did that, he would be out within the matter of a week, I think.
Eric, would that be the right solution?
Oh, yeah. You'd see Donald Trump and his favorite "you're fired" moniker going on. And I don't even know if it would last a week, quite frankly.
Wow. Those are the sorts of comparisons, Paul Cox, that absolutely blow my tiny mind of how different we are.
Yeah, I think what's very interesting is the difference between the way the US is politically run and the way UK is politically run. The reason she's not out on her ear or fired is because if she goes, so does the Prime Minister. Because the Prime Minister essentially rubber stamps absolutely everything that Number 11 does, by the Chancellery, I mean. And as a result, he has no choice. If he sacks her now, they go. And he'll be telling everyone who's willing to listen within his party that if they go, then the markets will tumble and the world will come to an end and Labour will never be voted in again, which is partly true, to be honest.
Paul Cox, we've only got 30 seconds. Should Nigel Farage do a deal with the Tories?
Absolutely not. It wouldn't make any sense whatsoever, Bev.
Yeah, excellent. You had a few more seconds than that. So
sorry, Bev. You gave me 30. I'm so sorry, Bev. What I will say is I've now got 3 seconds left. Is there's absolutely no way you would.
Now you've wasted it. Now you've wasted it. Now you've wasted it. Go, go, go. Right, we'll speak to you in a little while. More to come in the next hour, including the latest on the war in Ukraine. After the weather, snowing, look.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Lots of bright, if not sunny weather around for many of us, although there will be a fair few showers towards northern and western parts in particular. Also some southern southeastern counties seeing a few showers pushing through at times, but across central and eastern areas a lot of dry, bright, sunny weather to be had. Like I said, a fair few showers towards the north and west. Some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side, and worth bearing in mind, whilst winds will be a little bit lighter than yesterday, still a bit of a breeze towards the north and west as well. Temperatures are around average for the time of year, most places getting into high single figures or just about low double digits towards the south. As we go through the end of the day, not a huge amount changes for many places across eastern parts of Scotland, away from the Northern Isles, staying fine with some clear skies to start the night. Showery bursts of rain though across more western parts of Scotland, and a few showers for Northern Ireland, and here it is going to quite quickly turn cloudy and wet as a front makes its way in as we go through the end of the day. A few showers around some western and also southern coastal parts of England and Wales, but more central and eastern parts of England actually staying largely fine, like it will have been through the daytime. That front in the west that I mentioned marches its way across Northern Ireland, then pushes its way eastwards across England, Wales and Scotland as we go overnight. It could be quite heavy as it pushes through, and there will be some strong winds with it as well. Further east, clinging on to the dry weather, could be a touch of frost here, and also further west, a late frost possible as clearer skies come in behind that front. That front then does mean it's going to be a bit of a wet start across much of Scotland and down the eastern side of England as well, but eventually it clears away towards the east. Something a bit drier, brighter following in behind, but also a few showers pushing in, and some of these showers could be heavy. There could even be some rumbles of thunder and a bit of hail mixed in as well. Temperatures generally similar to today, so around what you'd expect for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Still to come, can President Trump solve the conflict in Ukraine? What does it mean if 1 in 3 children in Glasgow do not have English as a first language? And should actress Sienna Miller be walking around with a massive baby bump in effectively just her pants? Stay with me. Oh, we're all a bit delirious here tonight. Still to come on The Late Show Live this evening. Discussions are being had on the Ukraine war. It seems that Donald Trump may be on the cusp of peace. We're going to bring you those latest developments. And a shocking story out of Glasgow in Scotland. Nearly a third of children in the city do not speak English as their first language. Now, is that a problem? What does it mean for children in the classroom? That is demographic change on an absolutely industrial scale. And also, what's wrong with this? I do not think that is acceptable. That is Sienna Miller looking gloriously pregnant. But why has she got no clothes on? What is wrong with these actresses these days going on the red carpet in, frankly, just their underwear? Stay tuned. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. And this is the second hour where we've got all the stories you're going to be talking about later today. More debates and 0 ad breaks. So stay with me. Get in touch this evening, of course, gbnews.com/your say. But first of all, President Vladimir Putin has warned that Moscow is ready to fight. He says they will defeat the European power if they start a war with Russia. America and Russia have sat down for talks today. US envoy Steve Witkoff says the talks were constructive, but that there is more work to do. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump said this.
As you know, we have a problem with a war that our people are trying to settle now with Russia and Ukraine. We are not involved in the war monetarily anymore. Biden gave away $350 billion like it was candy. That's a massive amount of money. And much of it in cash, a lot of it in equipment. I don't give away anything. We sell the equipment to NATO. The European nations pay us for the equipment, 100% price. And then they bring it to Ukraine or whatever they do with it. But we're trying to get that settled. I've settled 8 wars. This would be the 9th. And our people are over in Russia right now to see if we can get it settled.
Let's talk now to former British Army spokesperson Mike Shearer. Mike, that number there, $350 billion that the US has given to Ukraine. And of course, President Trump just wants this to end now. Can it, Mike?
I'm sorry to be the harbinger of bad news. And don't shoot the messenger, Bev, but no. Look, they've had another 4 or 5 hour meeting, a negotiating team made up by Witness Whitcroft. He may be a brilliant businessman, but he's not a diplomat. He's light, he's incapable. And what we have here, Bev, is a fight between a deal maker and a troublemaker. And I'm afraid it's much easier to make trouble than it is to make a deal when you're dealing with ideology. Look, the Russians have said that they are no more closer to a deal than, well, they're no more closer. Because what Putin wants is absolute subjugation of Ukraine. And he, in fairness to Putin, he has not changed his stance one iota since he started this. And I did say, I've been saying on GB News for the best part of 3 years now that he is not going to change his mind. And the West needs to
just remind us, Mike. Just remind us what that is, because I agree with you. I think he's been very clear about this from the night that he came out and made that first statement when they invaded Ukraine about what he wanted. And he has this phenomenally sentimental view of that region, Putin does, and he's always harking back to the former USSR. And you know, I mean, But ultimately, what he's concerned about is the Donbass with the Russian, majority Russian people within it, isn't he?
Not really. I mean, that is a wheeze. This is right out of the old Russian playbook. Look, over the last 106 years, Bev, Russia has invaded 22 countries, some more than once, some more than twice. The longest period of stability has been 16 years. Now, what we're witnessing now is Trump wishing to establish imperial Soviet Union. He wants all the countries that used to be part of the USSR back. And I promise you, I wish I was wrong in this, but I know I'm not. He will not, if he takes the Donbass, he will not be settled with that. He will go for the rest of the Ukraine. Then he will go further. Moldova, Poland, the Baltic states, Finland. He will not be satisfied. The West have got to waken up to the psychology of this individual. He will not be settled with Ukraine.
But what, like, just explain to us why you think that might, because he's been in power for more than 25 years now, and he hasn't tried to invade Poland or us in that time. He's had plenty of time to do so. So why would he now want to take over the world like some, Marvel baddie?
Yeah, he is. He's a Bond villain. I'm afraid that is what he is. Look, this guy was a KGB colonel. So now, for those that don't really know what that means, he was working in Eastern Europe when the Berlin Wall came down, when the Soviet Union collapsed, and he's been bitter about that ever since that time, and he's just waited his moment. It could well be that he's simply losing his sense of rationality. Look, while reason sleeps, monsters are born, and he has lost his reason. I'm afraid it's a simple. Look, we're living through what. Look, let me take us back to 1938, when Neville Chamberlain went to see Hitler, and Hitler said, "Look, chum, all I want is the Sudetenland, this little slice of Czechoslovakia, and once I've got that, we're good." Well, we know what happened there. It ended up that he wanted a little bit more of that, and then he wanted Poland, and he wanted France, and we ended up in a world war. We must deal with this now, and I just hope that our American friends waken up and understand this, because whether they like it or not.
But Mike, would you go so far then to send British soldiers on the ground? What you're talking about here is ramping up World War III. Whenever people come on the telly and they, in their nice warm studios or their beautiful houses, and talk about coming down hard on Putin, sending out troops, it's not your son that's going to have to go and do it. It's not Eric Ham's son that's going to have to do it. You're talking about sending other people's children to die. And all because of this idea, and listen, I'm not saying Putin is a good man, to state the obvious, but all this idea that he wants to take over the world, like there is no other solution than to crush Russia. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
No, wait a minute, Bev. Look, I spent most of the 80s, late 70s and the 80s and into the early 90s, racing about the inner German border in a main battle tank. And I just recall at the time, most of my civilian friends had no idea what was going on because they were shielded from this stuff. We had our bags packed to go at a moment's notice. Mobilization, equipment ready to go. With the United Kingdom, Europe, and more importantly, NATO need to put themselves on a Cold War footing. I don't want that. I don't want to send anybody to war. But what Putin needs to understand is that there are limits. And if he wants to step over that threshold, that we need to be ready to deal with it. I'm afraid if you want peace, you have to prepare for war. And it is that simple. Look, I've been in a number of scrapes in my time. And I really don't want this to happen. We've had countless opportunities over the last few years to send Putin a proper notification as to where we are with this. And I'm afraid we've been too weak with it. And we really do need President Trump to lean in and see what side of history he wants to belong to.
Okay, all right, Mike, I will let you go, and I will also thank you on behalf of the rest of the country who aren't here to speak for your service. Even though it was a little while ago, we appreciate it, and we need more men like you. Former British Army spokesperson Mike Shearer there. Let's talk to Harley Littman, foreign policy commentator on this as well. Harley, good evening. Thank you very much for coming on to talk about this. So where does this go next? Because I keep hearing people say we have to show strength and force against Putin to bring this to an end, but Donald Trump is trying very hard via Witkoff and Jared Kushner as well now to act with diplomacy at this stage, to bring it to a more peaceful conclusion without more people dying at Christmas. Holly.
Well, you know, your previous speaker was, I think, on point. Let me just give you a good analogy. If the year was, I think it's 1936, and Germany has signed a treaty with the Allies who won World War I, called the Treaty of Versailles, and it said that the Rhineland, which was part of Germany, needs to be demilitarized. So Germany sent troops into the Rhineland to militarize it in violation of the Treaty of Versailles. His generals were alarmed, and they said, what happens if England and France opposes us? And he said, then we'll retreat. But England and France did not oppose Germany. And ever since then, Hitler kept going forward and forward, and saw Europe as it is today, a continent of appeasers. And I say, I know you mean well, you're a very caring person, but I say this with great respect to you, but your view will lead us to World War III. I'm 100% sure. Because you are desperate for peace, that you're willing to do almost anything, ignoring the fact that Russia is the aggressor. You said before that we're there to crush Russia. Nobody's here to crush Russia. NATO is an entirely defensive organization. Nothing offensive about it. Nobody's looking to change the government in Russia or to enter Russian territory. Nobody. This is about Russia being imperialistic, colonialistic, and taking control of another country that does not belong to them. They're stealing Ukrainian land and committing atrocities along the way. They took 20,000 Ukrainian children. I don't hear any of you talk about that. And by the way, I don't know of any dictator in history that successfully conquered their weaker neighbor and just stopped. Your previous guest is spot on. If he succeeds with this and takes more of Ukraine, and we know that the peace plan that we're looking at, that the tentative peace plan, we'll call it, calls for the Donbass area to be given to Russia, which they did not even conquer. That will enable them to enter the rest of Ukraine easily. They were not able to defeat Ukraine in 4 years, partly because the Donbass area is strongly fortified and has natural barriers to it. The example is one last quick example, World War II again. Your previous speaker on point pointed out that in Czechoslovakia, Hitler said, I only want the Sudetenland. I'm not going to touch the rest of Czechoslovakia. Well, the West gave him the Sudetenland, which, yes, go ahead.
I hear you, and this is what we hear all the time. It's all this psychology. It's basically just psychology. Let me bring my panel in as well, if we can. Can we bring our boys into boxes here? Like what I keep hearing, Harley, is we can read Putin's mind, and we know that if we allow him to have parts of Ukraine, then he will not stop. But again, I just ask you and it comes from a place of naivety perhaps, is why hasn't he done this before now? He's been in power for more than 25 years.
It's a good question. It's a very good question, and I don't have the answer to that question. But that doesn't negate the point that he wants this land. Now, how do we know that? I predicted on television before he went into Ukraine that he would go into Ukraine. And it's not because I'm so smart, I'm not. It's just that I read. And if you read Putin's speeches over the last 20, 25 years, he's been saying the biggest calamity to happen to Russia was the loss of its empire in the last century. He doesn't mention World War II, where Russia lost almost 30 million people. Think what this says about him. The biggest disaster to befall Russia is losing his empire. And he wants it back. Read his speeches. You don't have to be smart. Just read it. It's very clear. It's arrogance to think you know better what he means than his own words. He wants this land back. He believes it belongs to Russia. And in fairness to him, Russia has always controlled Ukraine, except for a brief period during Lenin's rule. And he wants this back.
But if we cast our mind back to on the eve of that invasion, when he did sit down and give that speech, and he talks about, and remember, he was under pressure from his own people because the Donbass is majority Russian residents, Russian citizens, Russian-speaking people who were being bombed by the Ukrainian forces. And his argument was, and I'm not here to defend him, it's horrendous what's happened to those hundreds of thousands of people, potentially millions of people that have died in this conflict. It's horrific. But his argument was, I am under pressure from my own people to go in and protect the Russian people in the Donbass, and I will do that in order to protect my people. And if there can be an arrangement whereby...
That's so convenient.
Well,
you know, this is exactly what Hitler used. He said the German people were being discriminated against, and they were, in the Sudetenland. And the majority of the people in the Sudetenland, which was part of Czechoslovakia, were German. This is what dictators use. They have a very clever reason. They have good rationalizations, but it's all a mask for conquest. His role model is Ivan the Terrible. His role model is not Bill Clinton or Obama.
You're just playing psychologist again. You're just trying to read someone's mind, and I just don't think it's helpful to be trying to read people's minds and say, look at what he's read. I mean, the point being that if this agreement in terms of, okay, well, you can control the Donbass with majority Russian-speaking people in it, and you rent it back to us, which is one of these points, and it sounds like a potential solution cooked up by businessmen, maybe not politicians, and you can pay Ukraine to effectively own that area of land and rule that area. If Putin says, fine, let's do that, I'm okay with that, why is that not a good solution, Harley?
Okay, a few reasons. One, I'm going to go back to what you said, playing psychology. Read his speeches. He's given dozens of speeches. It's not just once. He mentions this. He's been mentioning this for 20 years. Believe him. It's arrogance to think
he hasn't done anything about it until now.
Well, because people ignored it. They viewed it as it's propaganda. He's using it to mobilize his country. He's venting. I can't explain why people ignored it. He never really acted on it. But look, he went to war against Georgia. He took Crimea. Then he attacked Ukraine. What more do you need? This is not playing psychology. He took 3 countries, pieces of Georgia, part of Ukraine, Crimea, which he absorbed in 2014. And then in 2022, he then went after Ukraine itself. Those are 3 examples. Where is that about psychology? He's being an aggressor. And by the way, I want to share something very important with you. If you are going to establish a precedent that you could change borders through force, you are opening up the whole world to war and conflict, because most nations in the world have border disputes with their neighbors. Think about that. And I'll add another big one. Look over at China. They're watching everything.
But he would say that is why he doesn't want Ukraine to be part of NATO. By that logic, his reasoning that he does not want Ukraine to be part of NATO, and that's the line in the sand, that would apply to him, surely.
Well, you know why he doesn't want Ukraine to be part of NATO? Because then he can't conquer Ukraine.
Because they're on his border, as you just said.
is on his border. But why? NATO does not threaten Russia. That's the whole point. It's manufactured by Putin to mask conquest. You believe in the goodness of people, and you have a hard time seeing that someone could just be a conqueror like conquerors 100 years ago and 200 years ago. That's exactly what we're seeing. He is a man obsessed with getting back his empire. His speeches, again, I'll repeat this, because this is really important. He's given dozens of speeches
I've
over 20
listened to the
years.
speeches. I interpret them slightly differently. I've listened to the speeches. Let me bring in my panellist. Matthew, do you want to wade in on this? Because we all want the same thing. We all want peace, I think. I think my logic is just simply, in order to gain peace, you do have to listen to the aggressor to work out the solution, rather than just bomb them.
No, I don't think you listen.
Hang on, Harley. Hang on, Harley. Go on.
One of the points that Mr. Lippman made was that NATO was a defensive force in Europe, and allowing Ukraine to join NATO makes it an offensive force to the people of Russia. I don't know where this ends. I do wonder what Western Europe, what your European investment and American investment looks like in Ukraine that forces Vladimir Putin to stop. Do we stop at the border between Ukraine and Russia, or do we go into Georgia, or do we go where does this stop? It is the John Bolton form of foreign policy where we take military adventurism into places, and I just don't know where this war game, or Bev as you call it, the psychology, where these war games end. Do we march into Moscow? How do you stop a madman if he is still in office? And so there are a lot of questions, and as a small L libertarian, which I'm sure Mr. Lippman will not appreciate, I'm just deeply concerned about the level of investment and where we would have to stop, or where Western forces would have to stop Vladimir Putin.
Eric, what would you like to say?
Well, you asked the question about why is it that he has not done anything until now. And I would answer that Putin has been actually very, very active up until now. I think people just perhaps did not read the signs. But one thing we see about NATO is NATO has, in fact, actually expanded. In fact, they've gone beyond their 80s borders in terms of what would actually be part of NATO. That is perhaps, I think, a massive trigger for Vladimir Putin. And now you see more and more countries joining NATO. And for someone who is as paranoid and as deeply threatened as Vladimir Putin is, this has always, I think, been a concern for him. And so we have seen, as NATO has continued to expand, so has Vladimir Putin also attempted to expand Russia's boundaries as well. And I think he has also continued to push to see how far he could go against the West and what the West is actually prepared to do. We talk about what he has done in Crimea. That took place back in 2014. After 2014, we saw a number of poisonings and other low warfare attempts by Vladimir Putin on the West that were deeply and intentionally targeted in the United States and France, also testing our boundaries. And it's no different than what we saw from Al-Qaeda in the United States. We saw the 94 World Trade bombing. We saw the USS Cole bombing in 1994, leading up to, of course, that spectacular bombing on the World Trade Center on 9/11. And so I think that is an exact blueprint of what we're seeing from Vladimir Putin. So this is not something that just came out of nowhere and just all of a sudden happened. This is something that has been 20 years in the making, and we're seeing it play out right now. And he recognizes and knows that, no, Europe does not want to go to war with Russia, and also Joe Biden certainly did not want to go to war, because all of them know he has more nuclear capabilities than any other country in the world, and all of them believe that he is ready to use them. The problem with the United States in terms of what we have done is we basically tied Ukraine's hand behind their back and did not give them the weaponry to be able to go on the offensive. We never provided them with Tomahawks. We never provided them with the S-400 missile system. We only gave them F-16s just as Biden was actually leaving office. And one other thing that Biden did just as he was leaving office was he then only allowed Ukraine to use the weapons that were provided by the United States to actually go on the offensive, but they could not hit Moscow. So they were already in a very weakened and vulnerable state. And now you have Donald Trump, who many see as a Putin troll and is not going to do what is necessary. And Putin recognizes and sees all of this. And as your guest is saying, he is not going to stop because he doesn't have to, because no one is going to make him.
His economy is being hit hard, though, Harley, isn't it, at the moment, in terms of the Russian economy and the oil and the gas situation? There is only so long that they can continue to be denigrated, or just in terms of the finances, that it's not good. Go on, Eric, did you have something to say?
Oh, I'll let him.
Go on, Harley. How's the situation at the moment in Russia economically?
Well, yeah, of course, the Russian economy is stretched thin, but they could go for a very long time. They're on a war footing. Everybody said they wouldn't make it this far. They'll make it the same way Germany's economy managed towards the end of the war. It's stressful, but there are so many loopholes in the sanctions we have against Russia. If we want to stop Russia, here's what you have to do, and your previous speaker was spot on. One, give to Ukrainians Tomahawks. So they could strike deep into Russia. Second, stop Russia where it matters, which is they are funding their war by the selling of oil. If you could stop that, if you could sanction countries that are buying their oil, you dry up the funds. You don't have to go to war. Somebody said about marching on Moscow. Nobody's marching on Moscow. When we see NATO expanded, let's talk about that for a quick second. Sweden and Finland, on their own, NATO didn't come to them. They said, we want to join NATO because we see a threat from Russia. Holland is not threatening anybody. Estonia is not threatening anybody. Poland isn't. There's only one country in Europe that's threatening nations and attacking nations, Russia. So, NATO is a defensive organization. And I have an answer to your question. The reason why I believe it's taking place now is because Biden ran out of Afghanistan. And countries watch these things. And they saw America is on the retreat. America is not. Pax Americana as an era is over. And they see that they can take advantage of it. And that's why he went into Ukraine now. He saw America as particularly weak. During the Trump administration and previous to that, I suspect Putin didn't feel they were either ready for war or he wasn't sure. And I think that's, to me, the most plausible reason as to why he did it now.
And perhaps getting to the end of his presidency, that might be an issue, Matthew. There are rumours about his health, of course, all along, and wanting to leave Russia in a stronger position than he took it over, perhaps.
Well, Mr. Lippman said that nobody's marching to Moscow, but the question is then where does it end? If European nations invested troops on the ground in Ukraine, if you can't stop a madman until you stop a madman, where is the stopping point? Is it at the border between Ukraine and Russia, or is it into the Russian people's territory in what is now known as Russia?
Three things are actually still at play. One, you have Russia is able to sell its oil freely to both China and India. And India has made clear that even with the trade war with the United States, they are not going to stop buying that cheap Russian energy. And also, we know China, as the second largest economy in the world, they're prepared to continue to not only prop up Russia, but also to continue to purchase Russian oil as well. In addition to that, where Europe needs to actually get serious about this is there is nearly $170 billion in frozen assets that Europe holds that belongs to Russia. They need to take those resources and provide them to Ukraine in order for Ukraine to buy American military weapons to be able to fight on an even keel against Russia. I think that is when Vladimir Putin will know that this is serious. But until then, Europe has to actually show that they've got some skin in the game, and they need to be serious about this. And right now, we're just not seeing that.
Okay, last word to you then, Harley.
Yeah, I just think that, again, when you look at history, it really tells you everything, because people don't change. You get new information, technology changes, but dictators that succeed in conquering their weaker neighbor never stops. I can't think of any in history that did. He will be emboldened to do what he said he'll do. He wants this land back for the Russian Empire. And it's like anything in life, people don't go through a red light because there are consequences. They don't want to hit another car. They don't want to get a ticket. Same thing with dictators. I'm not suggesting you have to go into Moscow. That would be a bad idea. I think if you show Putin that it's going to be a higher price to continue this war as opposed to ending it, that's where you'll get him to the peace table the best way, without more violence and more killing. But you have to do that. It's like anything in life. He has to pay a very big price, and the United States has to have the will to do that, which is very questionable. And above all, what I would say to Europe is, forget about America. America is in an isolationist mode. They see this as Europe's problem. They see Europe as not stepping up with their own defense. They don't want America to defend Europe anymore. America has been in Afghanistan, Vietnam, and Iraq, and Americans view them all as failures. America has no appetite and will not help Europe. And Europe has over 500 million people. Russia has 130 million people. And there's 32 members of NATO. Europe has to get its act together and defend its way of life, or they're going to lose this war, and they're going to be corrupted and taken over by Russia, and the way of life that everybody knows now will decline dramatically.
Okay, all right, Harley, thank you. Harley Lippman there, foreign policy commentator. And actually, there's a lot of British taxpayers who don't see it as a European problem at the moment. They're seeing it as a Ukrainian problem. Do you agree? gbnews.com/your say. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live, what is really happening in our classrooms, because new figures show that nearly 1 in 3 pupils now growing up speaking another language before English. That's in Glasgow. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. So that story there, new data collected by the Scottish Government has shown that nearly 1 in 3 children in Glasgow does not speak English as their first language. It's 28.8% of students in the city schools speak English as a second or additional language. Now, Glasgow currently accommodates more asylum seekers than any other local authority in the UK, subsequently earning its name as Britain's asylum capital. My panel are still with me. So back to a more domestic issue, fellas, here in the UK. Now, I don't know how much of a problem this is here in America, Matthew, but can you think of schools maybe that you're familiar with, or regions that you're familiar with, where this would also be the norm?
Well, I'll be quite honest, Bev, I didn't know English was the primary language in Scotland. But what is very interesting...
Admittedly, there are some Scots who it is quite hard to hear what it is that, if you're English, work out what they're trying to say.
Is the survival of a nation relies on borders, language, and culture. Borders, language, and culture. And the second item there is language. Many people who move to the United States from other places where English is not the primary language, statistics show that first-generation Americans are fluent in both their native tongue and in English. And this is something that is so tremendously important to keep a people together and cohesive. In the United States, we call ourselves a melting pot. Now, it's changing over the last few years, but I do think it's very important for people who are representative in a national territory to share some element of language and culture together.
You see, this is... Can we bring in Paul Cox from London as well into this conversation, because this isn't about adults who haven't learnt English, Eric. This is about children who have clearly arrived in recent times and recently, and they don't speak English as a first language. Eric, is it a problem?
Well, here in the United States, there are communities all across the country where you have communities where English is actually the second language. We call them Little Havana and Miami, Little Dominican in New York. And you have, and let's not even talk about Los Angeles, where you have entire communities that are Latino-based or even Asia-based. So that is actually something that, for me, I've actually grown up with, and something that you've seen all across this country. But somehow in the United States, we've managed to make it work, because while in those communities, their respective language is the dominant language, you do have people who do speak multiple languages. They can speak English when they go outside of their community, but within their communities, they do speak their native tongue.
Why, if it works here, Paul, is it so problematic for us? Is it something to do with there being a land border between America and South America and Spanish-speaking countries? Like, why are we so shocked by this? Because I am.
Well, I think we're right to be shocked. First of all, Matthew stole my joke. I was going to do the Scottish accent joke. That's my role, Matthew. Okay. In future, allow me to be funny, please. Thank you. Very good, by the way. No, I think we should still be shocked, irrespective of there being a land border. I think we should still be shocked. It's very difficult, this situation, because as you rightly pointed out, Bev, these are young children that have come with their foreign-born parents to the United Kingdom, and they're being entered into the school system, and all they've known their whole life is their mother's tongue, literally. And they're not learning English anywhere else. So the school can't do too much about that, but they need to be in the system to assimilate. So I think this is part of our immigration policy. You know, the idea of coming to the UK is wonderful for these people, and do you know what? Come, but come if you're interested in our culture and you're interested in amalgamating into the way we live our lives. As the other chaps pointed out, look, you have to have a core culture for anything to exist. We talk about multiculturalism all the time. It doesn't work because everybody's counter-opposing one another. You do need... And the great thing about the US is they have... You know, you have this very clear idea of what being an American citizen should look like. In the UK, we don't have that, to the point that if we were to mention that, it would be seen as slightly bigoted in some way to suggest that we should have it, Bev. So I think it's a huge problem, and we need to overcome it.
Yeah, and actually the classroom is such an important place for this discussion as well to be had. I spoke to my 14-year-old today who was telling me they'd had some discussion about politics. I said, what lesson? She said, maths. I was like, you're supposed to be doing maths in your maths lesson, not talking about politics. But apparently the discussion had come up about who the children would vote for. And my youngest sort of said with a couple of the boys, I'd quite like to vote for reform. And apparently there were gasps of shock and horror around the room. I think the maths teacher sort of keeled over at such a suggestion. And when they said to her why, she said, well, I quite like my country and I'd quite like to keep my country like it is. And she didn't really know what she was articulating. She's clearly watched quite a lot of GB News. But this is where the children formulate their culture. This is how they learn who they are, right? And my concern is for the Scottish-born children in those classrooms, where a third of the kids, so if you've got a class of 30, which is generally the size of the classrooms in the UK, 10 of those children are having to have extra support. As a teacher, I don't know how you get through a lesson and correctly serve the 20 English-speaking kids when you're having to constantly say to the two tables have got 10 kids on, oh, let me do this in a different way, or let me bring in the translator. I don't know how they must make that work, Eric. How do you even manage that as a teacher without penalising the British-born children?
I think here in the United States, I think that has always been part of for the course, because the United States has always been a melting pot. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. There's a community in Detroit, in Metro Detroit, called Dearborn, where it's a community that's overwhelming Arab American, and you go in that community, and everything is in their native tongue, in their native language. They have the places where their religious centers. They have their own schools. I mean, they are literally communities that are not necessarily cut off from the larger community, but they are communities where it does perhaps feel very much like home, but they know how to maintain their culture, their identity, but also when it's necessary or when the time comes, they know how to assimilate and acculturate with the rest of the larger community as well. That
area of Dearborn, which is a monocultural Muslim town now, city, I don't know what the population is of Dearborn.
Over 100,000.
400,000.
Over 100,000.
Over 100,000. So that is basically a big slice of the Arab world in America, and it has recently become a flashpoint, hasn't it, for riots and for violence, Matthew, and therefore I think it's partly what we've been seeing in Dearborn is partly informing the rhetoric that we're hearing from the White House about the fact that they want to cut down on the number of people coming from Arab nations. That's part of the reason, isn't it? They're going, whoa, we don't want the rest of America to look like Dearborn, and I'm all right with that.
You're absolutely right, Bev. And the key to cultural and economic success in the United States, and hopefully in a place like Great Britain, is for people to move here and in the first generation to become acclimated to American culture by bringing representation of their own culture, food, language, people, but also know how to interact and vibe, I guess I would say, in a mixed culture of people who primarily speak English.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, how would you feel if your daughter was in a class where 10 of the 30 kids didn't speak English as a first language?
Well, my first concern would be that she wasn't getting the attention she needs as a pupil in that class.
That's right.
And the problem goes for those 10 pupils who don't speak English as well, because if there isn't anyone in the classroom to help accommodate them, they're not getting any education whatsoever. So why are they there? I would have a problem with it. You know, you'd have to ask a few questions. And by the way, you know, resources are thin on the ground. You can't, you know, there's a reason that we don't have people wanting to be teachers. It's not an easy job. And I'm not sure how these Scottish teachers are managing in that situation.
I know, and I can hear people watching this now going, well, hang on a minute, my child has got dyslexia, they've got ADHD, they need teaching assistants, and you mean my taxpayers' money is paying for teaching assistants who can speak Afghan? Like, this is the issue, isn't it? That's the problem, is that we feel, and it builds up that sense of resentment from people in the UK saying, why am I paying so much into the system when other people who haven't paid into the system are being prioritised? Right, let's move on, fellas, shall we? I don't know whether we're going to go straight to this clip or whether we're going to do a little bit of these funny little junctions we do first. What's wrong with this? There we go.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Lots of bright, if not sunny weather around for many of us, although there will be a fair few showers towards northern and western parts in particular. Also some southern southeastern counties seeing a few showers pushing through at times, but across central and eastern areas a lot of dry, bright, sunny weather to be had. Like I said, a fair few showers towards the north and west. Some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side, and worth bearing in mind, whilst winds will be a little bit lighter than yesterday, still a bit of a breeze towards the north and west as well. Temperatures are around average for the time of year, most places getting into high single figures or just about low double digits towards the south. As we go through the end of the day, not a huge amount changes for many places across eastern parts of Scotland, away from the Northern Isles, staying fine with some clear skies to start the night. Showery bursts of rain though across more western parts of Scotland, and a few showers for Northern Ireland, and here it is going to quite quickly turn cloudy and wet as a front makes its way in as we go through the end of the day. A few showers around some western and also southern coastal parts of England and Wales, but more central and eastern parts of England actually staying largely fine, like it will have been through the daytime. That front in the west that I mentioned marches its way across Northern Ireland, then pushes its way eastwards across England, Wales and Scotland as we go overnight. It could be quite heavy as it pushes through, and there will be some strong winds with it as well. Further east, clinging on to the dry weather, could be a touch of frost here, and also further west, a late frost possible as clearer skies come in behind that front. That front then does mean it's going to be a bit of a wet start across much of Scotland and down the eastern side of England as well, but eventually it clears away towards the east. Something a bit drier, brighter following in behind, but also a few showers pushing in, and some of these showers could be heavy. There could even be some rumbles of thunder and a bit of hail mixed in as well. Temperatures generally similar to today, so around what you'd expect for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I am Bev Turner. Shall we go to have a look at some of the front pages of the papers? Let's go through them quite quickly. So we've got two quite fun stories to do for you at the end of the hour. The Independent is leading with, "I'm still tormented by the horror of Sarah's final hours," says the mother of Sarah Everard. And the Metro are saying, "Lammy, the jury is out." It is not the time for a pun. Basically, David Lammy having got rid of juries from trials is a really, really serious story. The Guardian, "A bitter injustice. No officers are going to face discipline over Hillsborough." I just find it extraordinary that the issue of Hillsborough from 1989 is still being talked about now. And Putin says that Russia is ready for war with Europe. The Sun, the great game robbery, the priciest football tickets ever. It's the World Cup, of course, in the USA this next year, 2026. And that's the fact, that's a depressing story for football fans, that they're going to be incredibly expensive. And the Times is saying economists warn of low growth and higher bills, and double tax whammy will hit millions of hybrid car drivers. Bad news if you bought a hybrid. It's even worse apparently than having bought an electric car. And also the Mirror is running on the Hillsborough story as well. Police shame, no justice. The Daily Mail, cut price, royal rents under fire. And the Eye, still no justice after 36 years of investigations into the Hillsborough disaster. Now, let's look at this footage, gentlemen, that we've been trailing. This is Ellie Goulding. I'm going to show you. She's a singer. I'm not sure whether she's in your Spotify playlist for any of you, but that's Ellie Goulding on the red carpet attending the annual Fashion Awards at London's Royal Albert Hall on Monday. Just in case you weren't aware, she's got a belly out. She's very pregnant. She is 38 and she's got a 28-year-old boyfriend. Well done, Ellie. I very much approve of that. And Sienna Miller was also there, the actress, and she is 43 and she has a 28-year-old boyfriend. Again, I approve of that. But why is she wearing no clothes? Paul Cox. I'm not okay with this. Look, I'm no Mary Whitehouse, but why does a woman who is so beautiful and so fecund and marvellous have to have her knickers on the red carpet? And why, Paul Cox? Am I just getting to be a bit old? What's wrong with me?
You're not old, Bev. I'm not having that at all. And I don't have a 28-year-old boyfriend, and I don't want one either. But I'm glad that, you know, I'm glad that these women.
I recommend it.
I'm sure you do, Bev. I'm sure you do. I'm glad these women do have young men to play around with, and you can see it's working. But what I would say is I don't understand, like you, what they need to. Look,
There was a bit of a delayed reaction there on the joke. Well done, Paul. I'm glad it's working. Yeah.
What I would say is, look, it's not my place to tell them what to do and what not to do, but there does seem a propensity now, much more now in a very modern contemporary era, to basically be as naked as you possibly can be without actually being naked. So I mean, one of them was wearing net curtains, wasn't she? So you could see everything that she was wearing, and by all intents and purposes, she's actually fully dressed. But of course, she wasn't fully dressed because you could see absolutely everything. Like I say, I feel very uncomfortable to tell anyone what to wear, let alone young, beautiful women. But it does seem to me that something's been lost in our culture. I'd like to see a little bit more decorum, Bev. And maybe I'm getting old too.
Yes. Well, listen to us. What do we sound like? Matthew, what do you think? It's not very sophisticated, is it, to have all your body out on display like that?
Well, as we say in the United States in the summertime, skies out, thighs out. I was certain that the election of Donald Trump would bring the Handmaid's Tale style modesty to women all over the world, and I'm quite upset about this, to be honest. No, I think motherhood is a beautiful thing. I think it should be celebrated. I don't know if it should be celebrated in this way, but clearly Sienna is doing this so that we'll talk about her on this program tonight.
Oh, and it worked, Eric Hound. We've fallen right into that trap, haven't we?
Yes, we have. But I agree with Matthew. Motherhood is beautiful. A woman that's pregnant with child, that's something to celebrate and to adore. Her fashion sense, while perhaps maybe not my taste, you know, we do live in Western democracy. Some people hate us for it, some people love us for it, and clearly these people are taking advantage of it. And hey, they're the ones with the 28-year-old boyfriend and have them knocked up. So maybe we all are doing something that, you know, they're
knocked up.
No one's knocked me up.
I'd rather she was dressed like that than in a burqa, to be fair. So, I mean, I have to check myself, don't I? But I just don't think it's very sophisticated, Sienna Miller. You're classier than that, love. Right, moving on. International pop superstar Sabrina Carpenter. Again, I'm guessing Sabrina Carpenter, not familiar to all of you, Matthew? No? Eric?
I don't know who any of these people are.
No. Paul Cox, you're a fan of Sabrina Carpenter? Well, she is not happy because there she is. Again, not a lot of clothes on. The Trump administration used one of her songs. Here we go. Have a listen.
Have you ever tried this one? Have you ever tried this one? Have you ever tried this one?
if you're listening on the radio, we just saw some rather dramatic clip of ICE arrests, so that's the Immigration and Customs Enforcement people arresting people who are here illegally, and they put the Sabrina Carpenter song to it, and Sabrina Carpenter basically hit out and said, I don't want my song to have anything to do with that. I did not give you permission. And therefore the White House, she said, this video is evil and disgusting. Do not ever involve me or my music to benefit your inhumane agenda, Paul Cox. It's a little awkward because the response then came from the White House spokesperson. Let me just find it for you here. Let me find it for you. I just wanted to show you what the White House response was. Oh, I can't find it. Go on. But they basically hit back and used the words from the song to say, well, you know, maybe you were just stupid, etc., and used the song against it. They doubled down on it, basically, Matthew, didn't they?
Well, the social media strategy of this White House has been the most advanced troll operation I've ever seen. A month or so ago, American comedian Theo Von had a similar video play ahead of an ICE series of ICE raids. It's funny and it is culturally relevant. It may violate copyright and other sort of legal framework for who owns whose music and work, but it is certainly funny and it plays into the culture.
And I think we found the White House statement. This was from one of the spokespeople, said, here's a short and sweet message for Sabrina Carpenter. We won't apologise for deporting dangerous criminal, illegal, murderers, rapists and paedophiles from our country. Anyone who would defend these sick monsters must be stupid or slow. That was Abigail Jackson who said that. And in the song of Sabrina Carpenter, apparently she asked about stupid or slow are the words that she uses. Eric, does she have a point to say, I didn't give you permission to use this, I don't want to be associated with it?
Oh, absolutely. We have seen a number of high-profile musicians really push back on either the Trump campaign or the White House for unauthorized use of their music. And I certainly understand their point. I mean, they are very guarded about their work. This is how they make their living. This is how they make their money. And I think they want to be clear. And also, and I think as an administration who does have an oath to adhere to the law, I think they should actually respect what these artists are saying. They're not making a political statement about saying how you use the music, but the fact that you are doing it in an unauthorized way, that is what I think they're responding to.
Yeah, Paul, what do you make of this story?
Well, I actually know who Sabrina Carpenter is, not because she's semi-naked a lot of the time, but because I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she pointed her out. But one thing I would say, it's very interesting, like a lot of art, once it's released, it's kind of the ownership of whoever's listening to it. Now, I understand there's a moral argument, and she can say, I don't want it associated with this politics, and I might like it associated with the other politics, but at the end of the day, once it's out there, it's out there. They're still paying for the right to play it. So it's a very difficult argument from her perspective, because at one point, on one hand, she wants the capitalism of it all, and on the other, she doesn't like the political insinuation.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because I say you're free. If you write a song, you know it is free there out in the world. You give up your ownership of it. You cannot legislate for who is going to use that song under whatever circumstances. And I think there's something about this particular Trump government, though, that people like Sabrina Carpenter, they don't want Matthew to be associated with. They have to be seen to be super pro-immigration, super liberal, and therefore, because it's this government, they just don't want anything to do with it. Like if it was a Biden government, she'd probably be delighted, wouldn't she?
You're absolutely right, Bev. I think what we see here is what is absolutely fascinating is that the progressive left and the cultural left says orange man bad all the time, and so we have to oppose him all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Eric?
Well, I think the Biden administration would have actually gotten the authorization and would have followed the letter and spirit of the law and gotten authorization, because again, every time your music is played, that's how you make money. That's how the record label makes their money. And so this is an administration that claims to be pro-business. I think what we're seeing here is anti.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, OK, I think we've come to... Oh, no, we've got 30 seconds left, Paul. So who do you like? What musicians do you like, Paul Cox? I've got nothing else.
Well, I don't like Sabrina Carpenter that much, but I do really... My band is like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the 60s. I was born in the late 70s, so then I became a 90s kid. I like Oasis. I like British rock music, basically, but I'll listen to anything. Bev. Yourself?
Ah, how about you, Matthew?
David Bowie, fantastic.
Eric?
Yeah, good choice. Yeah, I'm more a Temptations guy myself.
Oh, right. And with
Nice.
that, I'll leave you. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for your company this evening. Thank you at home for joining me. I will be back here tomorrow night, midnight in the UK. That is 7 p.m. here in a wonderful, snowy Washington, D.C. Sleep well. Night-night.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Lots of bright, if not sunny weather around for many of us, although there will be a fair few showers towards northern and western parts in particular. Also some southern southeastern counties seeing a few showers pushing through at times, but across central and eastern areas a lot of dry, bright, sunny weather to be had. Like I said, a fair few showers towards the north and west. Some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side, and worth bearing in mind, whilst winds will be a little bit lighter than yesterday, still a bit of a breeze towards the north and west as well. Temperatures are around average for the time of year, most places getting into high single figures or just about low double digits towards the south. As we go through the end of the day, not a huge amount changes for many places across eastern parts of Scotland, away from the Northern Isles, staying fine with some clear skies to start the night. Showery bursts of rain though across more western parts of Scotland, and a few showers for Northern Ireland, and here it is going to quite quickly turn cloudy and wet as a front makes its way in as we go through the end of the day. A few showers around some western and also southern coastal parts of England and Wales, but more central and eastern parts of England actually staying largely fine, like it will have been through the daytime. That front in the west that I mentioned marches its way across Northern Ireland, then pushes its way eastwards across England, Wales and Scotland as we go overnight. It could be quite heavy as it pushes through, and there will be some strong winds with it as well. Further east, clinging on to the dry weather, could be a touch of frost here, and also further west, a late frost possible as clearer skies come in behind that front. That front then does mean it's going to be a bit of a wet start across much of Scotland and down the eastern side of England as well, but eventually it clears away towards the east. Something a bit drier, brighter following in behind, but also a few showers pushing in, and some of these showers could be heavy. There could even be some rumbles of thunder and a bit of hail mixed in as well. Temperatures generally similar to today, so around what you'd expect for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very festive good evening to you and welcome to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Daubney. Coming up on tonight's action-packed show.
First, I will create new Swift courts within the Crown Court with a judge alone deciding verdicts in triable either way cases with a likely sentence of 3 years or less.
Yes, it's a double whammy of Calamity Lammy as he announces plans to cut jury trials but also admits 2 accidental release prisoners remain at large. And meanwhile...
Well, I do think that it's a racist policy.
I believe that policy is racist.
It is racist.
Yes, it's the hit piece that simply will not go away. Both David Lammy and Keir Starmer's Attorney General Lord Hermer today have called on Nigel Farage to apologise for the racism allegations that he has already denied many, many times that happened over 50 years ago, and also on tonight's show.
This is the result of the extraordinary open border experiment conducted by the last Conservative government.
Astonishing new figures out today reveal that nearly 1 in 3 children in Glasgow don't speak English as their first language, raising serious questions about the state of Britain's borders. And finally, a former Labour Party nighttime economy advisor has warned British pubs are on the brink of extinction. I'll be joined by a pub landlord shortly who will reveal the true struggles of the nation's favourite institution. And also, any minute now, we're expecting both Nigel Farage to join us live from Parliament as he votes on the budget. And also, Donald Trump is expected to make an announcement any moment now. That is an action-packed show. It's all to come. But first, is your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. Vladimir Putin says he doesn't want war with Europe, but is ready to fight. Speaking after an investment forum in Moscow, the Russian president says the Europeans do not have a peaceful agenda and are on the side of war, and seeks demands from the war in Ukraine that are not acceptable to Russia. It comes as Putin is meeting US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Moscow, as Washington says it's very optimistic about a possible peace deal. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said that some things still need to be worked out in the draft peace plan, but that now more than ever, there is a chance to end this war. The Justice Secretary has confirmed a major overhaul of jury trials, saying some cases carrying sentences of 3 years or less will now be decided by a judge alone, not a jury. David Lammy says the changes, along with expanding magistrate sentencing powers to 18 months, will speed up cases and help tackle the record Crown Court backlog. But the Conservatives are attacking the plan. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick saying scrapping jury trials is dangerous.
If the Justice Secretary gets away with this, it's the beginning of the end of jury trials. He's already in retreat. Let's unite to send him packing.
David Lammy pushed back, insisting juries remain fundamental, but says too many defendants are playing the system and victims deserve faster justice.
In his tirade, he never once mentioned victims. Not once. Not once in his clip did he talk about the people waiting in that backlog.
Meanwhile, the Justice Secretary has revealed that 12 prisoners have been mistakenly released from jail in the past month. 2 are still on the run. David Lammy says the pair at large are not violent or sexual offenders, but won't give further details while police prepare arrests. It comes after a series of blunders across the prison estate, including the wrongful release of convicted sex offender Brahim Kadur Sharif and the case of Hadushka Batu, whose mistaken release sparked protests in Essex. Mr Lammy says stronger security checks are now in place, calling the early signs a downward trend, but admits there remains a mountain to climb to fix the system. Elsewhere, a long-awaited report says 12 ex-police officers would have faced gross misconduct charges over the Hillsborough disaster, but none can be disciplined because they'd already retired back in 2012. The police watchdog found fundamental failures on the day and concerted efforts to blame fans, leaving families with what lawyers call another bitter injustice. And a British man has been detained in Ukraine on suspicion of spying for Russia, according to Ukraine's security service. Investigators say the suspect, a former member of the UK armed forces who travelled to Ukraine last year to train soldiers, was later recruited by Russia's FSB, allegedly tempted by easy money. He's accused of passing Ukrainian military coordinates to Moscow and even preparing terrorist attacks, including receiving instructions to build an IED. He was arrested in October and is now being held on suspicion of passing unauthorised information to Russia, charges that could carry up to 12 years in prison if convicted. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me in an hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Thank you, Tatiana. Welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Dorby. Now, today's double whammy from David Lammy began with the latest accidental prison release calamity when he confessed that a further 11 prisoners were wrongly released in the past 3 weeks alone and that 2 remain at large. But then he went on to address Parliament and reveal the government's plans to massively roll back jury trials as a means of improving judicial efficiency.
First, I will create new swift courts within the Crown Court with a judge alone deciding verdicts in triable either way cases with a likely sentence of 3 years or less, as Sir Brian recommends. Sir Brian estimates that they will deliver justice at least 20% faster than jury trials.
Well, to discuss all of this, I'm joined in the studio by the Shadow Attorney General, and that's Lord Wolfson, as well as my esteemed panel this evening. That's the former Conservative MP and the Minister, of course, Sir Ranil Jayawardena, and the journalist and the former Press Secretary to Paddy Ashdown, Joe Phillips. Welcome one, welcome all. If I could, I'll start with you, Lord Wolfson. What's your reaction to today's sudden U-turn? 5 years ago, David Lammy was all in favour of jury trials. In fact, in the Lammy report, he specifically stated those from disadvantaged backgrounds could get a negative outcome. Suddenly, he wants shot of juries. What's changed?
Well, what's changed is that he seems to have been told by the Treasury that he has to do something. But what the Labour government needs to do, actually, is to look at the criminal justice system in a holistic way and to work out where the delays arise and to deal with them. Cutting juries is not going to improve the efficiency of the system at all, which is David Lammy's supposed justification for it. There is simply no evidence that cutting juries is going to make the system more efficient. And this goes, of course, much further than the report from Brian Leveson, the very distinguished judge. He proposed something different. He proposed that for some cases you should have a judge and 2 lay magistrates. Now, I do have problems with that proposal, but at least it maintains some sort of community involvement in the justice process. And the one thing we know about juries is that they are extremely popular. People trust juries. They've been the bedrock of serious cases in our criminal justice system for a long time. And the fallacy at the heart of David Lammy's proposals today is this. He says, I'm doing this to cut the backlog. But when he was asked in terms, if the backlog is reduced and we get back to a properly functioning criminal justice system, will we have the juries back? He said no. So in truth, this is not about dealing with the backlog. It's a fundamental change to our justice system, and David Lammy hasn't begun to explain why it's necessary.
May I ask you, Lord Wolfson, for example, in areas of free speech, the data shows us you're more than twice as likely to be convicted, found guilty, by a barrister, by a judge, than by a jury. A great many people have huge concerns that this is a step towards authoritarianism.
Well, I've great respect for our judges, but there's no doubt that if you are dealing with criminal cases day in, day out, you get, so to speak, hardened to it.
Yes.
You become cynical. And people trust juries because juries bring to the jury room their experience of life. I've sat on a jury. Now, of course, there are limits to what you can say by law about what happened in the jury that you sat on. But what I can say is that people's faith in the jury is, in my view, well placed. The jurors are a cross-section of society. They are far more representative of our society than our judges are. And that's why I think that people instinctively trust juries. It's interesting, in fact, that there are very few things in this country that you have to do. We don't have conscription. You don't have to vote. But with very few exceptions, you do have to serve on a jury. And that's not accidental. It's because serving on a jury is really your main civic responsibility in this country because it's playing your part in the criminal justice system.
Earlier on the show, on my previous show, I had Sarah Sackman on. She's the Minister of State for Courts and Legal Services, and we put it to her, should there be a sunset clause? So once the backlog is cleared, revert back to juries. She didn't answer that question. Many people believe that this is not only a temporary fix to clear the backlog, but a permanent step backwards to get rid of juries altogether.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't answer that question because David Lammy did answer it when Jeremy Wright asked it him in the House of Commons today. Jeremy Wright said to him, if the backlog comes right down, will we have our juries back? And David Lammy says, oh no, because we've got to have legislation, it's going to go through Parliament. The truth is, this is a fundamental change to the system of criminal justice. And it's quite odd because we have a government which is always banging on about the rule of law. We have a Prime Minister who's a lawyer. We have an Attorney General who seems to be prepared to speak about anything apart from this. I think today he's been talking about racism allegations of against Nigel Farage. Last week he wrote an article in the New Statesman about the budget. But when there's a fundamental change to our system of criminal justice, and the Attorney General, remember, is essentially responsible for our criminal justice system in the sense that the Director of Public Prosecutions reports to him, the Attorney General is nowhere to be seen. If the government is really going to make these changes, it has to explain why they're necessary. And they haven't begun to do that.
Lord Wolfson, excellent. Thanks for joining us. Let's get my panel in now, Joe Phillips and Ranel. Joe, I'll come to you first, if I could. A lot of people have been very, very critical today of David Lammy. They called him the Lammy Dodger, or at least Robert Jenrick did. Calamity Lammy. Another exercise in buck passing. A jury is fundamental to the Magna Carta, to British justice, and this feels like a step towards authoritarianism and an erosion of the basis of British law.
I think Lord Wolfson has laid it out very well about, the absolute duty, the civic duty for those of us that are ever called to do jury service, that you have to do it unless you've got a jolly good reason why not to. There are a couple of things here. One is, why have we got the backlog? We've got 80,000 cases still waiting to go to court. Now, many of those cases, in fact, the biggest proportion of them are sex offences. Can you imagine waiting, either accused or as a victim, for years before you get to court? Many people pull out of the system. They decide, I can't go through it. I've got to get on with the rest of my life. That is not justice for anybody, whether it's the accused or the victim. There is a huge backlog, and yes, we know that the jury trials only account for 3% of all criminal cases. So you have to ask, why have we got the backlog? Well, we've got the backlog because of a lack of investment. That is down, I'm afraid, Ranel, and I always have to blame you, at least early in the programme, but that you can't blame that entirely on this government. You also can look at what we did during COVID, where we were much more efficient. We didn't have juries then, but we got through many more magistrates' courts because the courts were being used properly.
Joe, if I may interject, it always seems with this government, whatever the problem, insert Liz Truss, Ukraine, Brexit, you name it. it's always anybody and everybody else's fault,
absolutely.
apart from the Labour Party. They're in power. They need to own it.
Absolutely. And I think what David Lammy should have done is to have accepted Brian Levison's recommendations, which, as Lord Wolfson said, you have that sort of intermediate court system between magistrates. You extend the length of time magistrates can sentence people for. So at the moment it's 12 months, but you extend that to 18 months, I think is what Lammy said today, but it could go up to 24. You then actually have this intermediate court with a judge and 2 magistrates, which again brings ordinary people, but ordinary people with some knowledge of the law, into that process rather than judges doing it on their own. And that would have been sensible. And he could have then said, I'm doing what Brian Levison recommended.
So, Ranil, are you convinced this is a step towards more Lammy calamity?
Sadly, it's very concerning, and it is the road to a single individual deciding the fate of accused men and women across this country, without that check, that balance that a jury can provide. And, it's interesting, the Criminal Bar Association, the Bar Council, the Law Society, they've all said removing juries will not work, and it's not been properly piloted or evidenced in any way. The fact is that the evidence still has to be presented in court. The judge will still have to make a decision, and he will have to evidence why he has taken that decision. There is no reduction in time. This seems to be an administrative decision taken by the Lord Chancellor, presumably to try and save some costs somewhere. And the real solution here is to get courts sitting for longer and on more days. In Winchester Crown Court, my local Crown Court, so much of the time the courtrooms are empty. That's what the problem is. That's what the Treasury could solve.
Okay, I have to leave it there. Thank you very much. Excellent start to the show. Lord Wolfson, thank you for your time. Joe and Ranil, superb. See more of you soon. So coming up in just a moment's time.
Well, I do think that is a racist policy.
I believe that policy is racist.
It is racist.
Yes, could it just be the triple whammy for David Lammy as he and the Attorney General both today launched blistering attacks on Nigel Farage? That's next.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
How can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
And welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, your host tonight, Martin Daubney. Now, here's a reminder of the Labour Party's latest strategy in dealing with Reform UK, who are leading Labour by 10 points in the polls.
Well, I do think that is a racist policy.
I believe that policy is racist.
It is racist.
Everything is racist. Well, now they're trying to ramp it up and even further by jumping on the Guardian's racism allegations against Nigel Farage, with the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, today wading in, calling for Mr Farage to apologise, and, as if by coincidence, so did the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy.
I think Nigel Farage should apologise.
I do. You know, I've had a few. I was at school at the same time as Nigel Farage, late 70s, early 80s, and I've had a few former classmates contact me and apologise for some of the racial abuse that I suffered in that particular era. He should do the same.
It's worth pointing out that today Lord Hermer claimed that Nigel Farage had never once addressed the claims of anti-Semitism against him, but just last week on GB News, I interviewed Nigel Farage and he adamantly denied the allegations of anti-Semitism right here on this very show.
I've had huge support from the Jewish community over many, many of my years in UKIP, the Brexit Party, and now with Reform. And yes, of course, since October the 7th in particular, I've been a very strong supporter of Jewish rights in this country, and everyone knows that.
So let's discuss this now with my panel. Of course, that's the former Conservative MP and Minister Serrano J. Wardener, and also the journalist and former press secretary to Paddy Ashdown, Joe Phillips. I'm going to start with you if I can, Serrano. I put it to you that Lord Hermer is clearly Sir Keir Starmer's #1 legal appointment and is steaming in about allegations denied, made 50 years ago, and the central tenet of justice is a presumption of innocence until proven guilty. Not with Lord Hermer. He's saying apologise for something that you've denied 50 years ago. Why on earth is Lord Hermer getting involved in this political tangle?
Well, he's getting involved because clearly the Labour Party is very concerned about Reform's rise in their seats in the north of England in particular, and a lot of the backbenchers that Keir Starmer has to keep with him will be very concerned about that too. It's probably why they're so unruly in Parliament right now. But I think there's a bigger problem here, which is, first of all, as I said last week when we heard from Nigel, I really think it would be in Nigel's interest to get those papers published from Dulwich College to really put this to bed once and for all.
Perhaps they don't exist.
Well, maybe they don't. But
if they did, surely they'd been out by now.
Well, hopefully Dulwich College would be able to confirm that, but it would require his permission. I think that would be in everyone's interest to really show, look, there's no case to answer here, to put it in that legal sense. But the second thing that's really interesting is it's a distraction technique, I think, from Labour on some of the big policy issues that they are facing right now, which should concern us all, whatever party we are or of none. And, whether it's the abolition of jury trials, which we've just been talking about, or the fact that prisoners are being released wrongly and are at large in our communities, I think those are the things that surely an Attorney General, the government's top law officer, those are the things that he really should be talking about. And this seems to me to be a distraction.
Joe, let's bring you in at this point. David Lammy, again, joined in the pincer movement today on the precise day that the Justice Secretary yanked juries out for the general public. He decides that Nigel Farage is guilty. He became the judge and jury against Nigel Farage for unproven allegations and demanded an apology, the precise opposite of the presumption of innocence. I put it to you again. This is a joined-up political attack from an establishment that's terrified.
Well, I think Ranul's right that it's a distraction, and I think the Labour Party are incredibly stupid because there are far bigger things to attack reform on than what Nigel may or may not have said 49 years ago when he was at school. You've only got to look at Kent County Council, which is an absolute shambles. Look at the people who were elected to represent reform who are not up to the job, some of whom have resigned, some have been suspended, others have appeared in court.
Lots of Labour councillors have been kicked out or resigned or suspended. The BBC talk about them all the time.
We're not talking about what
and you're distracting now.
No,
back to the case in point. Why is the Justice Secretary attacking Nigel Farage today?
I'm agreeing with you, actually, and agreeing with Ranel that the Labour Party are daft to use this. If they want to use distraction techniques, then attack reform on their policies or their behaviour. With regard to Nigel and these accusations that have followed him around, as we discussed last week, for several years and have been published in a book, first came to attention in 2013, so, you know, a long time ago. But Nigel changed last week here on this show and categorically denied ever saying any of the things he's accused of saying, which was slightly different to what he'd said the previous day, which was he didn't remember it. Now, you know, in the I don't remember it, it would have been very easy to say, but if I had upset anybody, then I apologise, end of. By, as we discussed last week, by going absolutely hell for leather with the categorical denial.
But Joe,
it's put up or shut up.
This is the same reheated offerings every week in The Guardian, by the BBC.
Absolutely.
The political editor of The Guardian is clearly in the pocket of the Labour Party. Sir Keir Starmer steaming in.
I don't think you can make allegations like that they're in the pocket.
You don't think that the Guardian is the attack vehicle of the Labour Party?
The Guardian is Labour supporting.
I mean, come on.
But I don't think you can say that Pippa Creer, who is their political editor, who is a highly respected journalist, who's worked for a number of papers, is in the pocket of the Labour Party.
This is just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence that The Guardian, the BBC, Lord Hermer, David Lammy making the same allegations day after day after day. They're unfounded, they're unproven. And if they could be proven, then surely by now they would have been. But back to the point. My point is this. On the day that the presumption of innocence is removed, juries are scrapped, you've got the Justice Secretary and Lord Hermer saying no. Mr Farage is guilty. He should apologise.
Well, he's saying apologise. And actually, you know, there is an argument, as I've just said, Martin, that a week ago yesterday, in fact, when Nigel was saying, I don't actually recall saying any of those things or doing anything, but if he could have said, but if I did and I upset anybody, then I apologise. He could have done that. He chose to go one stage further and say categorical denial. And as Ranel said last week and has just said again now, if there are records at Dulwich College of him being suspended, of other people complaining, or of him setting fire to the school roll, then find it.
And surely there would be records of issues of that significance.
Exactly.
So, you know, and schools like Dulwich keep records for a very long time, so I doubt they would have destroyed
And you can apply for your own records.
Exist. Maybe they don't exist.
I'm sure an institution like Dulwich College would keep good records.
Are you seriously saying that these hitherto undiscovered records are out there?
No, I'm saying the point is Nigel can prove his innocence
he would have to apply
by requesting them himself. Only he can ask for them to be released. A bit like, you know, your NHS record or your, criminal record or whatever. The point is only you can ask for those to be released.
Let's get back to the point. I think the general public can see this on the large for what it is. It's not affecting the opinion polls. It seems to many people a desperate, joined-up establishment attack on keeping Nigel Farage out of power, and now it's involving the Attorney General, the highest, lawyer, if you like, in the land, and it looks like a stitch-up.
Well, so I totally accept your point, which I think I accepted earlier, which is Labour are doing this because they are very concerned about Reform's poll ratings. Yeah. They think that this is the route. You played the clips earlier from party conference and previously a lot of sort of archived footage there of Labour ministers describing policies as racist. Yes, clearly this is a plan. I don't think it's going to work. I think people are really frustrated, legitimately, with the situation of certain things today, like the boat crossings across the Channel, or indeed the cost of living, or indeed the release of prisoners into our communities, putting
all of which are getting worse under the Labour Party.
Absolutely, and so yes, I'm not disputing that in the slightest, but I do think there is a solution here, and that solution would be far better than the constant discussion about it for everyone concerned, for Labour and indeed for Reform.
And if you're going to attack reform on their their policies or their lack of policies or their behaviour where they are in office. But don't use something like this. This is not what people are talking about in the dog and duck, frankly.
Well, they are, because they think the whole thing seems to be a joined-up attack
Well, if
vehicle.
there's anybody watching from the dog and duck, perhaps they'd like to call in and tell us what they're talking about.
GB News at GB News.
OK, beautiful stuff. Thank you very much, Joe and Serrano. Now, moving on.
This is the result of the extraordinary open border experiment conducted by the last Conservative government.
Yes, astonishing new figures out today reveal that nearly 1 in 3 children in Glasgow doesn't speak English as their first language, and that raises serious questions about the state of Britain's borders. That's next.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Dorby. Now, it seems that just about everyone from the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary to Nigel Farage agrees that open borders has been a disaster for Britain, and today's news that nearly 1 in 3 children in Glasgow do not speak English as their first language seems to illustrate the sheer scale of change over these past 30 years. Now, Glasgow itself accommodates more asylum seekers than any other local authority in the UK, subsequently earning its name as Britain's asylum capital. Well, I'm joined now by the former SNP Glasgow City Councillor, Austin Sheridan. Austin, welcome to the show. The figures released today, Austin, are stark. 28.8% of all pupils in Glasgow speak English as an additional language, and that's up 1/3 since 2019. Is this a concern?
Well, it's not a concern because it simply states it isn't their first language, but it doesn't mean that they don't speak English and they're not integrating into our society. We also have to bear in mind as well that although the numbers in Glasgow would be smaller than other parts of Scotland, is that some pupils in Scotland, Gaelic or Scots would be their first language before English. You know, and that's something that's been recognised by the Scottish Government through legislation that just passed there on the 30th of November, St Andrews Day. But as I say, the most important thing though is to look at is how we're integrating into our society. And what you'll find is that those young people are multilingual. They are coming to a country sometimes where in war in places like Ukraine, and I think that we should all accept that, you know, that we should offer the hand of friendship and hand of help to those young people, and they're making efforts to learn English and integrate into our society.
Austin, the point is, your mention of Gaelic there is a complete non-starter. Less than 1% of Scots. Okay, less than 1% speak Gaelic. Less than 1%. It's an incomparable statistic to the fact that an entire third of children in Glasgow now speak English as a second language. That's gone up by a third, and it's gone up by a third for political reasons. The SNP has thrown open the doors, and that's because it's a city of sanctuary and the council gets paid money. Did anybody ever vote for this?
Well, I'll tell you what, Gaelic is very significant in Scotland. In actual fact, 2% of Scotland's population speak it. Glasgow has Gaelic schools within it. And those pupils that attend there, they would consider Gaelic being their first language before English. So these things are significant. It isn't just a case of it's just people that are coming in from abroad that view English as their first language. As I say, Gaelic and Scots are recognised languages in Scotland. So that should be appreciated. But what we're also looking at here is we're talking about English not being their first language. It doesn't mean that they do not speak English. There will be young people that come to this country that do struggle with their English, and they get the support that they need in order to learn the English language in order to integrate into our communities. And in terms of swinging doors open, you will be aware that the Scottish Parliament does not have control over immigration. That is a policy wholly reserved to Westminster.
You can blame Westminster all you like. The fact of the matter is Glasgow is the asylum capital of Britain. And here's the point. There is a, quote, severe housing emergency in Glasgow. Glasgow families with three or more children face a 100-year wait for social housing. Meanwhile, if you go to Glasgow or Scotland, anywhere in Scotland, as an asylum seeker, you are granted preferential treatment because anybody who's declared unintentionally homeless gets an automatic house. Homeless people, asylum seekers, are flocking to Scotland from all over the United Kingdom because they get put in front of the queues ahead of Scottish residents. I put it to you, the SNP, these policies are hollowing Scotland out, and there could be a political awakening if you're not careful.
Well, I put it to you that the fact of the matter is that immigration is in control of Westminster. That is not something that the Scottish Parliament has any control over. Glasgow specifically...
What's the point of the SNP if you're going to blame Westminster for everything?
Glasgow specifically faces problems because of contracts that are put in place by the Home Office. We have explicitly said that we need urgent help from the Home Office in Glasgow in order to help with the crisis that they're in control of. And at the end of the day, if we don't get that help, then there may come a time where we're going to have to stop providing that support. But we have been in contact with the Home Office. We have made very clear the pressures that are in Glasgow.
Austin, Scottish governmental rules dictate that councils must house anybody who's unintentionally homeless in the country, including asylum seekers. Nothing to do with Westminster. That's to do with Holyrood.
You said preferential treatment. You said preferential treatment. But what you've said there is it's not preferential treatment towards asylum seekers. So let's make sure that we stick to the fact of the matter, right? So they're not getting preferential treatment. They're getting the same treatment as anybody who's homeless would receive. What we've the problem in Glasgow specifically are contracts that they have in place with the Home Office. The council in Glasgow have said that they're not working and that we need the Home Office to offer additional support to the city because of the housing crisis. Because if the same applied to everywhere in Scotland, it wouldn't just be the Glasgow local authority. It would be all local authorities in Scotland. The problems in Glasgow are faced by contracts by the Home Office. The Home Office needs to help Glasgow meet the needs of the contracts that they have with us.
How about if Scotland helps itself and changes its policy on housing asylum seekers in a preferential manner to your local residents? This has nothing to do with Westminster, nothing to do with the Home Office.
No, it is.
Own it.
Westminster control immigration, and these are contracts.